love this woman's music. And it's such an honor and a treat, a special treat to get to bring her on and get to not honor her sacred songstress self, but also her sacred storyteller self, which to separate them is meaningless. So just as we tap into each other, let's just do a little like grounding before we come in, and just begin by putting both your feet on the ground. This is kind of a nice thing to do. And just close your eyes for a second. We're not going to do a long meditation today, but we're just going to do just like a quick feet on the ground, hands on your belly, noticing where your shoulders are. Are they leaning in or are they leaning out? If they're leaning in, maybe just allow yourself to come up a little bit, roll those shoulders back. Give yourself the courtesy of some space in your spine, your belly, as you're taking a nice deep breath. As you exhale it, just letting go of your day so far. You can be so bold as to let go of any expectations. And now just come to your heart for a second, because we've been away for a couple of weeks. A lot's happened. Coming back to, why did you come to this course? What are you seeking? What was your desire? And specifically, what's in your heart's desire to receive from this beautiful guest speaker that we have today? I'm just coming present. And as you're ready, just give your hands a little massage, just massaging your hands. These amazing tools that do so much work and go down so unacknowledged. Tools for our writing. And a little, so that we bring them together and do a little rubbing back and forth, creating some heat. And why don't we do a real live welcoming for Ayla. Welcome, Ayla. Thank you so much. We're so glad to see you. Woo! So what we'll do is, I was playing a little bit of the song that we're going to talk about before. Ayla's music is, to me, some of the deepest, nourishing music I've gotten to hear. It is like soul songs, in terms of, when I hear it, I hear this sense of generosity. I hear this sense of sharing of a real gift. I hear a sense of just such authenticity, and I think that it's something that's been really resonant with a lot of people. And what I wanted to bring Ayla on for, because as we were talking, she was like, songs, storytelling, and what I hear, when we originally were talking, really hearing the stories in our songs. And as we approach storytelling, as you know, we've been coming around, we've been circling in this kind of three-dimensional way and refusing to act like storytelling is a linear process. And it felt really important to come at it through different modalities. And so, as we all know, one of the most incredible storytelling modalities is singing. I'm so really excited to have Ayla with us today. And so, Ayla, I thought we would just begin. And so, as you all, what's going to happen today is we're going to do a little Q&A, the two of us. Ayla is going to offer us an exercise that she's going to walk everyone through. So hopefully your journals and pens are nearby. And okay, so Ayla, if you could start by, we were talking about just your journey of finding your comfort with your voice, and specifically with sharing it with other people. And I was really touched by you were sharing that you had like some real barriers that you needed to overcome in your process of giving your gifts to the world and finding your way as a songstress. And I thought that would just be a potent place to start, because a lot of us are working with some hard stories. And we'd just love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Well, thank you everyone for welcoming me. This is really sweet. I've never done this before. I can see all your faces, and it's really a delight to be here. My journey with music, I've always been, I guess in this context, I would say a storyteller. I've always been a writer, and ever since I was really young. And I never identified it with being a musician. I just knew that I loved to write stories and write anything. And it was actually at the end of college that songs found me, and it was literally almost overnight that songs started to just come through. And I had been learning guitar, so I think learning the instrument helped call them through in a certain way. And I was listening to a lot of Bob Dylan, who was definitely opening up whole new word portals for me. But I was terrified of singing my whole life. And I remember even singing the happy birthday song with friends at parties and singing really, really quietly, because I had this irrational fear that I was tone deaf, because a friend of mine had been tone deaf growing up, and I would hear her sing and think that potentially I was tone deaf and no one was telling me. And so I just let that be a belief in my head. And I have realized since then that it was actually a sign that I had good pitch, because I could actually hear that someone else didn't. But I didn't think about that at the time. And so I just let that fear run things. And songs started to come through in college, and I was living in a hippie co-op dorm. And there was just such an openness in those people. And they would hear me singing and ask me to sing more. And they did that over and over and over and over. And they just kept asking me to share. And I give them a lot of credit for me having the courage to actually pursue music, or at least attempt it at the time. And yeah, it was just an ongoing journey of every single time being afraid of singing in front of people, and then doing it anyways, and then doing that again and again and again and again. And still, I still have days where I'm afraid of singing in front of people, and even with all this practice. And so just meeting that again and again. So it's definitely not been something that I did from a young age or have been totally comfortable doing. It's something that I feel like found me and kept asking me to show up. And it still keeps asking me to show up. And every time I try and hide, it asks me to show up again. So that's been an indicator for me that it's something I want to follow, because I think my whole relationship with what I share and what I want to give to the world is that I want to feel like there's some kind of indication out there that the world wants it, that it's helpful in some way. And so I definitely wouldn't be doing music right now if I didn't feel an indication externally of a desire for it to be shared.
I think that's a beautiful point, and that piece between, and I think I love hearing your part about, you would do a little bit and then people would ask you for some more. Mm-hmm. And you answered the call. And I love that. I once heard that a storyteller never refuses a request when a story has been made.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of like feeding the muses, it's like, if the muse comes to play and then others see her and recognize her and they ask for her, and you as the vessel are like, oh no, I'm not gonna do it. Like, we'll just keep playing through you. And I think it's a great point. I wanted to talk to you about your process of, like, when you start to hear a new song, or perhaps it's a concept or a story or something that you want to play with, or an idea, and then how you start to shape it, and then how do you polish it, and then how do you know that it's like time to present it?
Uh-huh.
And I'm gonna give you two questions. I'm gonna kind of like lob this other one, which we talked about before, and maybe it'll make sense to move these into both, which is also, Actually, no, you know what? Let's just do one question at a time.
Okay, because that's a big one. Well, my process, oh man, it changes all the time, and I'm still learning about it, is the truth of it. But generally,
how many CDs have you recorded?
I've done 5 solo albums and 5 collaboration albums.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I love that you're still working on it.
What's that?
I love hearing that you're still working on it.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. Well, it's an interesting thing, and I feel like, at least for me, creativity always wants to be fresh, and it doesn't want to be in any kind of fixed system or process. It wants to be almost approached with a new set of eyes each time or something. And so I've definitely had the process. I would say the most common process, or the one that I should say I love the most, is when the song chooses me. And I am just doing whatever I'm doing that day, folding laundry or like walking down the road or whatever is going on. And all of a sudden I hear that melody and I catch it. Something I talk a lot about in workshops that I do, in songwriting workshops, is always having the tools with you. So always having the notebook, always having, for me, it's always having some kind of voice recorder, which is on every phone nowadays. And so catching it, and then the next step is usually giving time to it, because I can just catch it and keep on with my day. But for me lately, I've been working on discerning when it's the kind of creativity that wants to just come in, be caught, and then you go on with your day, versus the kind of creativity that's like, attend to me now. Now is the moment. If you don't attend to me now, it won't have this energy again. And so when that happens, I find a piano if I can, or I just sit with it for a while, or I just sing it out. I think that's something lately that I'm really trying to practice more, is really being with it when it arrives, because there's potentially the most energy around it right then. And so if I don't give it energy then, it might take more of me working at it if I approach it later. Whereas it's almost like it's alive and it comes in. And so in that moment, it's very alive. It's at its most aliveness. And if I'm just with it for a while, maybe it'll bloom into something different than if I was trying to really work hard at it. So that's one way, is when they come and they just, the best, maybe my favorite experience in all of life is the feeling of a song just dumping itself through me, and like everything's clear and the words just come through, and it's really amazing. But more often I work at it and I have to meet the muses halfway and do my half of really like trudging at it and showing up and making time every day to go be with the piano or be with the songs or look back at what I recorded last week, or, just kind of bring it up again and rehydrate those seeds. And then more recently, I've toyed with really active, what's the way to put this? I'm getting over a cold, so my head is a little fuzzy. So, basically, it came from a process of doing a Kickstarter a long time ago, where I offered for 5 songs to be commissioned. And so it was the first time I'd ever written a song on a topic that I hadn't chosen. And it was absolutely amazing because it pulled me outside of my normal songwriting process box. And I had to really search for words and ideas, and someone would send me this book they had written, and that was how I would like really get into that world and be able to write a song about it. It was quite amazing. And then a project I did with David, my partner David, who's the Polish ambassador, and Mr. Liff, who's a hip hop artist. I wanted to write verses for these kind of hip hop hybrid dance songs that we were doing. And I dove really deeply into hip hop and listening to a lot of music that I would not have listened to otherwise. And it's just, I think it's another kind of favorite totally different process, but really immersing myself in a world, really immersing myself in a whole genre of music, really immersing myself in a book, or it's like, it's a way of getting so deeply into a world that I can write about it, even if it's not my experience.
So I'm hearing this great alchemy of like art, being willing to live with the muse whenever she shows up, part discipline of practicing and showing up at the piano and knowing that you have like a creative time, part pushing at your own edges in terms of being willing to try and work at different mediums. And I'll just say, my mom's a painter, and we have this conversation all the time. And in painting, it can be a little bit more obvious. And I think with musicians, it can be obvious. And even with storytellers, it can be really obvious where someone hits this one vein that's really resonant, and it gets a lot of attention, and a lot of like, people just love that from you. Like that kind of story, like that kind of thing. And you're like, yeah, I know how to do that. And then they'll keep repeating it over and over and over again. And then something dies.
Yeah.
Like 10 years later, the paintings aren't as interesting, or it's like they're just repeating the same thing. And so I really respect what you're saying in terms of your relationship with the creative process, your kind of commitment to its fluidity, and live with that different piece. I wanted to talk to you about working with painful stories. This is a theme that several people are really working with in this course, in this deep inquiry of this process. And to me, I see it as a multi-step journey, into one, hearing that it's ready to be worked with, wants to be tended to in a certain way, to this kind of reflective process of like, okay, what is a story? What does it mean to me? And then there's this threshold that I feel like, when does it deserve to come out of your journal and onto the stage, given as a gift to the public? And just wondering how you work with that. And I know that we've got a certain song, and I could play a minute of it if you want, or you could just speak to it.
Whichever you like, whatever you think is helpful.
Because not everyone got to hear it before, so.
Yeah, you could just play the beginning, because those are the words I would probably reference.
Okay, great.
How do you do when the rain gets under your skin, leaking tadpoles like it's a whim? And what do you say when it's all gone sideways and fools, and your heart won't beat with the rules? Little backing like a chute on the path, you're pushing past these boulders, pushing past these boulders.
Giving a sense. So yeah, I would love to hear about your process and that inquiry, and as it relates to that song too.
Yeah. That song came on a day when I was in the process of creating the Code of the Flowers, the most recent album. And I was having one of those days where everything feels wrong. And it was just like, I think I went to a friend's dance class. I literally just stood outside looking in the window, like, there's no way I can go dance right now. Like everything just felt really dark, and I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And I guess we all have our different syndromes. For some it's there's just so many ways that it can show itself, but often there can be this self-doubt syndrome that can just strike so hard for those of us that want to share some part of ourselves or be open to something coming through us. And for whatever reason, it can just get really strong sometimes. And so this is one of those days. And I just went on a walk, because that's something that I've noticed in my time of creating music, that walking in nature tends to call things in, or at least clarify things. And so I was at the end of the walk when the words came through, the first part. How do you do when the rain gets under your skin? And it was really just asking the universe that question, like, what am I doing? Well, how do I do this? And the idea of rain, and I think a lot in terms of we are nature. And so the rain that comes through us and the rivers that flow through us. And so it felt like that sadness had gotten under my skin. And I'm trying to think of some of the other words. What do you say when it's all bent sideways and fools? It's all bent sideways and fools. I think at that point it was, I recorded something into my phone. I recorded the first line, and then I went home and found a piano because I had a feeling about it. And I sat down, and that's when the notes started to inform the words on top of it. And I just kept singing. And that's where I try to step aside as much as possible to not let any judging voices come in, and just, like not question when it's all bent sideways and fools, not like stop and say like, what does that even mean? Da, 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 but instead just like, right. And little beckon like a shoot on the path. Like that's not really a sentence you'd find in English normally, but it's almost like giving myself this huge license to use whatever words I need to, and not need to have them make some kind of logical sense. And just that's when I get the most excited about lyrics, actually, is when they are painting a picture and you might not actually know exactly what the literal meaning is, but that doesn't matter because there's an emotional picture that gets painted through them. It's a lot more interesting way of using words for me.
I'm appreciating your trust. That's such a key part, especially when you hear something, you're like, that word doesn't make any sense. And rather than try to turn back and try to make it sense, try to listen to what it's trying to say and where it's leading you, and the bigger lyricism of it all. I think that's the magical part of, what I'm hearing you speak to, of your process and understanding that. And then there's resonance. And maybe you could speak a little bit to the power of resonance, because to me, it's this really mysterious thing. And I use it in all my storytelling. I usually begin and end stories with a song. And I don't have words to explain why I do it, except that I just know that it's really important to do and that it does something for us. Yeah. So I'd love to hear you explain in terms of what it does for people, if you have words for that kind of thing. And then, yes. See, I've got all these things I want to do.
I like your excitement. I think when you first say resonance, what first comes into me is the resonance in the moment of creating. And there's this mysterious feeling that I've tried to explain before, and I'll try again right now, but it's kind of just unique to each person probably, but it's this feeling, this resonance that happens when words feel right or when the melody feels right. And I usually feel dissatisfied with a song until I feel that feeling, even though until I feel that feeling, I don't know what I'm actually looking for to feel. But it's a definite like yesness, or just rightness to it. And I think a lot about the frequency that words have, and how words are sounds also. And so, you know, whether we're writing a story on paper or whether we're singing something out, the words carry sound with them. And, you know, I'm trying to think of an example, like plateau is different than surface, is different than table. And not just because those are different words, but because they actually like have a different musicality to them. Plateau versus surface is kind of like the S sounds. And so sometimes usually I'm not dissecting all my words so deeply in the moment, but because mostly I'm just trying to get my brain to stop talking so that I can write something and receive it. But when I look later or go back and want to change things, it's often because the musicality, it creates a certain resonance, it creates a certain frequency. And just by changing one word, all of a sudden I get that feeling, that yesness. Because it just needed that one word to come at a different energy. It's kind of abstract to really break it down.
I really appreciate it. And it's making me think of this conversation I actually had with Paul Hawken a couple of years ago. We were talking about channeling, and Paul Hawken's written a bunch of books, and we're talking about, you know, this process of receiving a book, you know, and I'd remember him saying, look, if you don't pay attention to it when it comes, it'll just go to somebody else, you know, and I was talking to him about that, and he's like, and I think I had like overemphasized the presence of the genius or the muse or whatever. And he's like, yeah, the muse is there, but I'm the one that's writing it.
Yeah.
You know, it was like a good dose of like human ego.
Yeah.
It doesn't get done unless I do it, you know, just for the record. You know?
Yeah.
And I kind of like really appreciated that. And he was saying that as much to me as to anybody, you know, it's like, and so I'm curious about this part of, you know, kind of coming back to that process of when you first get to hear it, and then how do you know that it's something that is becoming not just your journaling reflective process, but is something that is like worthy of other people's time, to put it in not a very poetic way, you know, that it's a worthy gift to, you know, that it's yeah. This might not be a linear question that you can answer, and I don't want to force it if it isn't.
Yeah. No, it's a cool question. I feel like there was definitely a period of, so I went through a lot of heartbreak prior to meeting my partner, David, like a couple years. And I wrote a lot of songs during that time. And most of them have no one's ears have heard them, you know, they just needed to be written. And I think for me, I recently realized that I think I need to dig up some of them because there's actually some good songs in there. But for me, sometimes it's a discernment between, is this a cathartic thing that I just need to write and get out there? Or is this something that will help others in some way? And the distinction often is, it's sort of like, am I just kind of trudging through whatever I'm feeling and like needing to have an outlet for it and needing it to just come out of me and just be somewhere else? Or is there actually some kind of internal transformation happening through this process so that when it comes out, that feeling in me that is there and the muck and all of it might be there, but then it actually can change me or change into something else. And, you know, the language I use also, the way the song comes out, there's 1,000 details that lead to whether it's a personal song in the moment that's just for me or whether I want to share it. It's almost this feeling of like universality, that if my personal stuff, if I can get into a place where the observer starts looking at this personal Ayla creature having an experience, and that observer self can say some things about that, that starts to be interesting. That starts to be, it's almost like then there's a potential for it to go somewhere that could be quite helpful maybe, or just relevant to people. Because if I just stay in that personal self, then it's just personal and maybe it won't be very relevant to anyone else. So that's one way I think about it. Yeah.
Well, it's a really beautiful distinction. Thank you.
Yeah.
Woman who loves words. I hear you have an exercise.
Yeah.
You would like to lead us through.
Yeah. It's kind of an exercise that changes every time, but base of it is, I love the idea of how words can be like colors on a canvas. And every color is a different depth or lightness or darkness or detail or overview, or, you know, there's so many ways of using words. And oftentimes, you know, we're talking a lot about frequency and the energy of something. You know, we can share any story, but which words we use has a lot. It will end up, you know, creating a whole different experience for someone. And so I get really excited about thinking in terms of almost like a movie, and how let's say there's a scene happening, and you wouldn't tell the whole movie just from one angle, like a long shot of like this person walks in, they see another person, they walk together, they start talking, they say these things, you know. Instead, what you see is light coming through the window and a foot walking across a wood floor, and then someone's eyes very close and a tear falling, and then back to another pair of eyes that close and look away, and then more feet walking towards each other. And it's told in these close-ups that create a feeling like, I don't even know what that scene is, but it's kind of intriguing already. And so this is an exercise for getting at those words, getting at the close-up. So I wasn't sure how to start this, because I usually start it differently when I'm doing workshops. But I think what we'll start with is one of my favorite writing exercises. The practice, I don't know if you guys do a lot of this already in this class or in general, but the practice is not letting your pen stop. And whenever so I'll give like a leading sentence, and whenever you get stuck and you notice your brain getting involved, you're going to come back to that sentence. And if you need to repeat it over and over just to keep your pen moving, you can do that. But you're just going to keep going, keep going, keep going, literally not letting your pen stop. No erasing, no crossing out. Those are the only rules. And so the phrase is, I don't remember. And you're just going to see what comes from that. And anytime you get stuck, write, I don't remember, however long you need to until your pen is moving again. So we'll do this for 2 minutes. Go. Okay. That was short. Find a close. So now you're going to look at what you wrote, and you're going to just circle or underline any phrases that you like. Just anything that you like the sound of. And that was pretty short. I usually do that for like 5 or 8 minutes. So hopefully you have something. And now looking at some of what you underlined, you're going to kind of pull out one of these and zoom in. So you can pick any phrase or any, I guess, anything that evokes an image. So looking at what you underlined or what was on your page, does anyone not have something that evokes an image of some kind? Does everyone have that? Okay. So you're going to pull that out and you're going to write again for 2 minutes without letting your pen stop, but this time zooming in. So imagining that you are I was going to say describing the movie, but if that feels fun to you, you should do that. And if that doesn't feel fun to you, then just free write, whatever, like free association. Doesn't have to be linear. If you want it to be linear, you should go for it and describe those close-ups. So if you wrote shadow, try and write about what shadow is without using the word shadow. So trying to find other words. So the point of this is to try and find other words and go deeper. And if you feel like you haven't gone deep enough, try and go even deeper into that. And I encourage the use of all senses, especially non-sight, to describe any of this. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So 2 minutes, going deeper into one of those phrases. And now, for the fun of it, if you guys are down, I would say let's go in the other direction and write for maybe a minute and a half or two with the phrase "I remember," and actually going back into what our stories are. Since the theme of this class is storytelling, and I hear there's a lot of you telling personal stories as well as collective stories. So you can always modify this if something starts coming through you and you're like, that's not my story. I would say just run with it, because it's good to just let the pen keep going. But I remember, and already kind of pushing yourself now as we write to go deeper into that detail layer and use all your senses. So if you find yourself focusing on visuals, on sight, maybe lean into smell, touch, taste, and hearing a little more. So I remember. Go. Okay, coming to a close. And now, looking at what you just wrote and seeing this time underlining, I mean, you can underline what you like, but seeing, maybe circling things that have feeling, that you feel like, if I were to go deeper into that, there's feeling there. So just seeing where that is. Something that could evoke feeling in another. And now we're just going to do one more deep dive into that, and just total free association this time, not sentences, as much as possible, not sentences, just picking one of those things that you circled or underlined and writing free association, non-linear words that are painting a picture of that. So literally using words like paint. They don't have to all string together in a sentence. And coming to a close when you feel ready. Unless you can't stop, then just keep going. So that's just kind of a fun little exercise in that last one, actually. I don't know if anyone, who felt like that last bit was hard? Like just writing. Yeah. I was having trouble with that just now. It's good to push our brains to not be linear. I feel like new things can come through when we're not trying to create sentences or whole thoughts. And sometimes pairings of words can happen that we would never have otherwise contemplated, which can lead to a whole new thing. And so a lot of this is, I was kind of playing with weaving it into something meaningful in that second bit when we were saying, I do remember, like something that's actually relevant to our lives. But a lot of this is generating new combinations, generating new words, saying things in a different way than we would normally say them. Mostly as a muscle that needs working. So a lot of the time I try and do this as a writing practice, not to actually create something amazing out of it, but just to work a muscle that doesn't get worked enough. And then it shows up later when I'm actually creating a song or writing something. Just because that muscle, it's, the rational linear mind is so those neurons are so clear. They're so well patterned in our culture. And so any way that we can kind of scatter those neurons around and get them firing in different ways is, I think, a really good thing. You can also try writing with your left hand sometime, because that will access a whole different half of your brain. And I've had really amazing journal sessions where I ask a question with my right hand and then my left hand answers. And it takes time to write, but it usually this really deep wisdom comes through because it's not my rational mind answering. So that's a fun one to play with.
I love that exercise. I think it's one of the best ones to turn off that part of you that says, I can't do this, or this isn't intuition, or this isn't really the muse. And like that, there's actually science that says that we're actually turning off our rational mind.
Yeah.
We switch to our non-dominant hand.
Yeah. I often feel like when I do the question and answer thing, it's almost like I write the question out and then I go to my left hand and it's like I'm sitting in front of a guru or something, and I just wait, and whatever comes through is really helpful for my life. So I recently had a creative breakthrough around this because I realized I was avoiding certain words, certain whole themes. I had sort of this is a new thing too, that it's still, percolating inside me. But I had created this concept, this belief that I believe is true, that words carry frequency and power and magic, and they are magic. And I had learned enough about that I started to be really hesitant to share anything that I thought might create a form in the world that I didn't want to see. So I only wanted to use language that was very clear about what I wanted to create. And the shadow side of that is that I realized recently that I was judging, that there was judgment there, that some themes or experiences that I would have were not worth writing about because it would be like lower frequency. And that if I looked at all the words and all the ways of singing and every experience of human life as a piano, what I was essentially doing was choosing certain notes and ignoring others. And that was silly, because you can't make a good song if you don't use the whole piano. And so lately I've been giving myself radical permission to write anything. And what's happening is I realize that it's not about avoiding certain topics or words. It's about encoding them with my own transformation, or sharing them in a way that ultimately lifts up. So it's a lot more helpful, I believe, to the world for me to write about self-doubt, and in the song go through a journey where by the end we understand what self-doubt really is at its root and how to maybe approach it, rather than just don't write about it at all, So there are certain words, though, that I wouldn't use.
Yeah.
Not out of judgment. I think it's discernment. It's like, am I judging myself or reality or my experience? How can I move beyond that? That's a good thing. But then there's some things that I don't care to write. They're not pretty enough of words, or they're just too modern, or they're not worth it. It's like there's also something to be said about not giving your energy to something you don't want to see more of in the world. So there's also that aspect.
I think that's such a critical piece, and it's a question that I've taken to some of my teachers, because it's haunted me. Discernment of, what do you do when a story comes to you, or a song comes to you, or something comes to you, and like I had a story come, and I hate the story.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I'm at this, it's a real reckoning of, do I want to be the channel for that into this dimension? And I kind of think of that as a creative process.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to channel that kind of fear, that kind of perception of what's happening through that kind of story? And do I want to live in it in myself? And I like what you talk about, discernment between, is this the frequency I want to play on? And then the work that we have to do as storytellers, is like, well, just because it does not mean that it's not worthy of working with.
Yeah.
Or just because it's got a dark shadow, does it not worthy of this transformative power of alchemical process that you're committed to, which I really appreciate bringing to it. So I just really appreciate this grappling. So I want to end with one last question, and then we're going to do a little quick reflection, but we're going to end up going into the second half of our course today, talking about our personal medicine. And I think the being able to articulate our personal medicine isn't something that we can always do. And so I'm going to put you on the spot with no notice, and I'm sorry. But I'm just curious if you, like we've reflected to you the medicine that we received, Yvette, a little bit from both me and Anne-Lorraine, and just wondering, do you have a way of articulating, or are you at that point in your life where you feel that you have words to express the medicine that's coursing through you in the way that you bring it?
Yeah. I think, I don't know if it'll be well articulated, because I'm a little fuzzy, but I would say that the medicine that comes through me it's of the wild and nature and innocence, and the power of innocence and wonder and being in love and in wonder with the earth and with all of life, and the immense power that's in that we underestimate. I think the medicine that comes through me is that of, I was actually looking at an old class of you guys, and someone said their medicine was inspiration, and I would say mine is inspiration. It's the medicine of the dawn rising, of the light being shown, and in the sense that, you know, in a shadowy corner, the light illuminates what's there. And so it's the medicine of possibility and hope and believing, and the power of our minds in believing what's possible, because it is only as possible as we believe it to be. And there's immense power there in our belief and in our minds. And I would say also, this is all the parts, I would say also the medicine of, it's something that's a little hard to put into words still, but it's the fractal nature of reality. And so listening to the stories of nature, listening to nature and her bodies, and that giving information for how nature is within my body and within all of our bodies, and how we can learn from that, and how when I do something here, it's doing something out there also, and vice versa. And so seeing that relationship, and sort of the way I like to write music, there's a constant dance between the outer and the inner life and world, because I feel like they're actually at the root of it. There's not separation. It's all of us, and all of this experience is, it's all interwoven in this way that I definitely don't have words for right now, but it's like those many layers of reality that are dancing at the same time. And the more we use language that pulls from one layer and another and another, and in one sentence is weaving the body with the rivers, with the cosmic Milky Way, and weaving all of those into one sentence, then it encodes that wovenness of reality into a thought. And I get really excited about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. What a beautiful expression of your medicine. Beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this section. And now I think we should take a second to shake your hands out, maybe stand up, shake around before we make our way into the next.
Thank you, Ayla.
Thank you, everyone. I'm probably going to go at this point, but it's been a real joy and delight, and I need to figure out more ways of just hanging out with people and talking about creativity, because it's really fun.
We'll have to do some more scheming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.